first thing today we're going to get started with is cystic fibrosis, and it's called CF. And not too long ago, my son, 15-year-old self, wanted a DNA testing, but he wanted the full medical DNA profile. So he wanted the expensive one and that's all he wanted for Christmas. And I was like, okay. So we get him that, and come to find out he is a carrier for cystic fibrosis. So that doesn't mean he has it or will ever develop it. But what that means is if he marries another carrier and they had a child, their child would probably have cystic fibrosis. So that's something we wouldn't want, right? So with the history and the technology that we have, progressing with medical science, we're able to possibly even, these type of diseases that are debilitating. Cystic fibrosis used to be a certain death sentence by the time you were mid-teens. You didn't make it out of it. And the really simple way to explain it is that the entire body forgets that we're only supposed to produce about a quart of mucus a day, and it basically starts producing 2 gallons. That it is just the mucus production is turned on and doesn't know how to properly regulate itself. And that doesn't, you think, well, but it's bad, because what we see is their digestive system that's supposed to have mucus, their respiratory system, which is supposed to have mucus, and all this is just excessively filled and clogged with mucus. And one of the first signs with the babies, when I was a newborn back in 1974, I was premature, and I was 3 pounds, 2 ounces, something like. I was tiny for back then, and I was sweaty. My mom said the nurses had to change my bed sheeting constantly, and they thought I had cystic fibrosis, because that's one of the signs with children. If they start sweating, and it's because of that excessive mucus. So, but fortunately, I did not. And usually that's one of the first signs. And then now they do testing for it just to make sure that it's caught early enough. People who have cystic fibrosis will have early signs and symptoms in childhood. They'll have a persistent cough, recurrent chest and lung infections. And because of the mucus issue in the gastrointestinal tract, they'll have a lot of issues with gaining weight, getting proper nutrients, and growing and staying healthy. And cystic fibrosis, this is showing you how, we should have clear bronchial and bronchi. This is just filled with mucus. The stomach is filled with mucus, and the pancreas and the small intestines. And it, like I said, in the past, it really prevented life past being a teen. Nowadays, we have modern medications, modern procedures, and we actually have a lot of treatments. We don't have a cure, but we have treatments to help these patients live a more normal type of lifestyle and longer. So you can imagine sinuses, lots of mucus, so sinus infection, constant bacterial and lung infections, sweaty skin, blocked bile in the biliary tree because of all the excess mucus, blocked pancreas, increase of diabetes, the not gaining weight, and nutritional issues, and also lots of problems with the reproductive systems as well. Not only does cystic fibrosis, increase the mucus, but it also starts altering the shape of the areas affected with mucus because of the constant amounts of mucus. It widens it. So we see this be a bad sign all over. Like I said, there's no cure. We can normally find it with newborn screenings. People who do have it are highly recommended to make sure they always get their pneumonia, the pneumococcal vaccine, and their flu vaccine and that stuff. We do know that there are different things that we can do. One of them is simple as doing pounding to the chest. Another one is postural drainage. It's a drainage thing. And another one is not antibiotics, but medications. And then there's other treatments, bronchograms, or it's something like that, where they go in and they actually can vacuum out additional mucus and stuff like that. And they can do that with the lungs and the stomach and stuff. But that's invasive. Nobody wants to have their babies go through that. So cystic fibrosis is a chronic condition. All right, we're going to move on, and we're going to go to strep. Strep is a bacterial. So the first thing that should pop into your mind is, hey, we can treat it with antibiotics, right? And but we know if we've ever had strep, it hurts. And one of the reasons is because the bacteria itself causes a real red and irritating, scratchy, sore feeling in the throat and the tonsils, even sometimes the uvula and the tongue. What we call in medicine, when something always has like the same sign and symptom in everyone, is we call it a classic, right? The classic sign of strep is what we call a cherry red throat. Now, does that mean every single person is going to present with that? No, because no two people are the same. My daughter had strep infections from sixth grade to about ninth grade. I'm telling you, about 2 a month. And what we ended up figuring, it was the freaking water fountains at her middle school. And we had to figure out, she was constantly missing school. We were figuring out what the heck. But once I started sending her with bottled water that they didn't first want to allow her to have, her strep infection stopped. And because I was like, I don't want you drinking this. I was trying to eliminate every possibility. So that makes sense, right? Bacteria, virus, stuff like that can be spread, especially if people put their mouth around it. So, but sometimes Sarah would present with that cherry red, but other times she wouldn't. But she would know after a while. She had it so often. She would know, Mom, I got strep. Back to the doctor. And strep hurts. Strep in the old days, and when I say old days, I mean days before antipyretics. Poop. What's an antipyretic? I'm not going to stop until somebody answers. I'm not going to go on until somebody tells me, because you've all had pharmacology. Waiting. Don't Google.
I had pharmacology.
Oh yeah, well then you're excused, Justin. One of my
reduces fever.
Yes, ma'am. All right, go on with your bad self. All right, so an antipyretic is a pyro, fire. So an anti-fire, basically, because when you have fever, your hypothalamus bursts into higher degrees. It goes into overdrive. Your whole body begins to get hot. And this is a response to you trying to let you know, because our skin's always trying to warn us, right? Hey, I don't feel good. Hey, something's wrong. Here's a fever. Does this knock, knock, knock get me better? And back in the old days, that's what killed most people was fevers. Because the fevers get so high, brain would boil and they were gone. And then if that didn't get them, then the actual bacterial infection itself. One of the bad things about strep, there are people that think, I'm going to let my child fight it off so they build immunities. Well, yes, some things can do that. Strep is not one of them that I recommend doing that with, because if left untreated, and if you work pediatric, this is important, to share this information. Strep can lead to something called scarlet fever. Basically, what it is it moves and becomes from the throat to systemic. And what is systemic? Throughout the whole body, right? And what does our skin always try to do? Warn us. So this is a classic scarlet fever presentation of a rash. And they would run high fevers, and usually within a week. Back in the old days, they were and buried. So lost a lot of kids to that. Nowadays, we don't see this very often because we're able to get antibiotics and we're able to get our kids treated and taken care of. Okay. This is just going, you can come back and look through this, but I'll tell you, little bitty kids, like I'm talking 5 and under, you'll see them with their throat or not wanting to eat, not wanting to drink because it hurts. They may not be able to verbalize that to you properly. And here's another thing that I always noticed with a lot of pediatric patients. With pneumonia and strep, they vomit. There's whatever reason, it's just a common thing I see. So sometimes the lymph nodes right here in the mandibular area, this will swell, and even sometimes underneath in the axillary, you might see swollen lymph nodes. This is all a sign of what? This is the body saying, I need assistance. I am not winning this war. Help. So now we're going to, go ahead, Justin.
What is malaise?
Malaise, I'm glad you asked that. I assume by now, and I forget, not everybody's at the same thing. Malaise means a feeling of just general, like, imagine if you were a human phone and you were running at 1 or 2% and you needed that charge. I like to think of malaise as that. You just don't have energy. You feel all you want to do is just kind of chill out, you know what I mean? Chill out on the couch, not move, not do much of anything. But and yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So and we see that a lot with bacterial infections that are bad, and we see that a lot with viral infections. And that's what we're going to move to next is viral. So let's retouch micro. So I am a doctor, and I like to think I am one. And when I have a patient come in, what do I know? If they've got a runny nose, they've got a post-nasal drip cough, they've got aches, this kind of thing, I'm going to look in their throat, maybe do a strep test, a rapid strep test real quick, just to make sure, hey, that they don't have strep, right? And then all them other things, okay, I'll say, okay, this is probably a virus, And so I know as a doctor that a viral infection will not benefit from antibiotics, correct? So saying that, what we still have is a really big issue with patients trying to manhandle and demand. My sister-in-law Christy's a pediatrician, and over in Lake Nona, and she still has parents that come in and tell her, she'll say, oh, okay, well, they've got a viral infection. Well, what's this rash from? It's because of the virus. Well, why? Because a lot of viruses causes rashes in children. Well, don't you need to run tests? Well, I'm certain this is a cold, or this is a viral URI, which is upper respiratory infection. And they'll just be honor on honor about, well, the neighbor down the street had antibiotics. Why don't we? Well, they probably had something else. So she still fights with parents, but the fact of the matter is antibiotics are not going to help with a virus. And what it actually does is harms us. It harms us not because it's going to have some massive reaction. It harms us because every time we take an antibiotic, we slowly decrease the effectiveness over time. And if you're like me, I am allergic to penicillin, all xylins, I'm allergic to all sulfa drugs, and I'm allergic to microbid. So that is the three major mama, papa, and grandpas of all medicines. So every time I do get ill, like when you get a UTI, the first thing they're going to give you is a sulfa drug. All right? If you get a respiratory infection or something, it's going to be some type of xylin. But because I can't have that, I'm very limited. So when I do get sick, they have to be very cautious and make sure, hey, this is actually bacterial. So I don't grow immune, because I'll give you a perfect example. I used to suffer with chronic UTIs, and then they found out it's because I had tiny little ureters, and I needed to pee after intercourse. Who knew? And ever since I actually started doing that, I really decreased the amount of UTIs that I have. It's good to know, women. And but prior to that, nobody looked into it and did studies to see why, and about my anatomy and stuff, and find out about my ureters. And I was given Cipro, because Cipro's if they can't take sulfur, they give them Cipro. I built a resistance to Cipro. And so one time I got a UTI and Cipro did nothing, and it got bad, and it started moving to my kidneys. And that's when the doctor was like, okay, let's do some tests. I finally found a good doctor that went in. So now that I'm back on topic to my whole, from my micro to my respiratory, it's important that we understand, okay? Viruses in their normal form, like a common cold, there are thousands of strains, okay? And we know about a virus, they're not intelligent, but they're highly adaptable. And they can constantly change their structure to adapt to things that we've invented and used to prevent them, like the flu vaccine. That's why you have to get a new one each year. And we know that viruses, most of them, are spread through sneezing, coughing, blood, saliva, airborne, stuff like that, touching things, then putting things in our mouth. And one of the things that that's good about, nothing really great about having a cold, but one of the things that is good about the cold is it's usually going to come on fast. So to be acute, right? You're going to feel a little tired. You might have that runny, constant faucet dripping nose, right? You might even feel a little, malaise. But usually with a cold, you can still go to work. You can still manage and do your things. Technically, should you go And have a mask on? Yeah. So you don't spread it. You don't give it to other people, right? Uh, but the good news is within 7 to 14 days, you're feeling better. And the better the immune system, better that you're doing. And these are all kinds of signs and symptoms. Why is this still here? Aha. Ah, poop. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, guys.
I do have a
Yeah, please go ahead.
so when you get the flu shot, like I guess every year,
Yes.
is it the same medication they inject into you, or is it something completely different? Like
Okay.
something
And
that like it
I'm
changed?
I'm glad you asked because we're fixing to cover the flu, and I'll explain that to you.
Okay.
And the flu and the colds, a lot of their symptoms are the same. The reason that we don't give yearly cold, is there are just too many cold viruses, and they just don't cause that smack to the face in our, elderly and our babies and our immunocompromised like the flu does. Okay? Because the flu, and that's where we're gonna, well, poo. Real quick, let me finish. But I'm coming to you with the flu. Treatment for the cold. What does everybody tell you? Eat some soup, get some rest, drink lots of fluids, and you should start feeling better. And this is proven, taking zinc and taking vitamin C, when you start getting the very first sign that you have a cold, can shorten the duration of it. There's something called coldies or wellborn or different things like that, airborne. And they actually, what they do is, because they have high amounts of zinc and C, and it's proven that it boosts your immune system and shortens the duration of those. So it is. Now, real fast, before we move on, of course, staying hydrated is very important. But I know my pharmacy people who have taken pharmacology know this. But if you have a small child, that means, for me, that's anything 18 and under, because they are never to take aspirin-based products, even though on the bottle it says baby aspirin. That is wrong. Okay, aspirin can lead to an increase in Rye syndrome, and we'll talk about that later, but it can be deadly in children. So 18 and over are the only ones that can take aspirin. And remember that. And the reason I mention it here is because they know that when a child is given aspirin while they have a virus, it highly increases their chance of developing Rye syndrome. Okay? Now, the flu, blum, blum, blum. And I loved the video. Did y'all see the video where the two guys were talking? It's like, what did he do when you cut his head open? That showed the half of the respiratory tract and how it enters in, or maybe it was a cold, and how when they sneeze out. That video is excellent. And it's one of my favorite videos because it just goes into so much detail about how viruses get into the respiratory system and it affects the respiratory system. And the flu is a virus. Now, there are different strains of the flu. Are there nearly as many as what there is of the common cold? Absolutely not. And we usually can classify them into group A, B, and C. And there might be various strains of A, various strains of B, various strains of C. But usually we have the ability to do that. So here's how this works. And I actually was educated. I told you my daughter's doing virology and all that. And for the longest, I was like, I'm not getting a flu vaccine. I don't need that shit. And so my daughter was just like, well, Mom, let me explain to you how the flu vaccine works. I was like, okay. And she said, throughout the year, during the non-flu season, everybody that comes in, they when they find out that that person is positive for the flu, they send those cultures and results to the CDC, you know, and that government organization that we're no longer participating with, but hopefully that'll change soon. So they send all their information to the CDC, and the CDC says, aha, and they graph this. And this is every doctor, hospital, nursing home, wherever they do the flu, check for flu, right? All of them send their information. So they got a team of laboratory microvirologists and all that charting all year. And so they find out and they look at it, and usually one strain stands out as like the winner. I've infected more people than the other strains. That's what they base the full yearly, they take bits of it. But something I learned from my daughter, they also have bits of the other two as well. And I did not know that. I thought it was strictly just if it was, say, B was the winner for the year. It was just B. But no, they take a tiny bit of C and a tiny bit of A. And so when you get a flu vaccine, you're really protecting yourself from the greatest threat, B, that year, because that's the higher percentage than what you're going to get. And then you still get a tiny bit of protection in case you do snatch A or C. And what it does is it doesn't actually prevent it, but it decreases its severity. And that's what the flu vaccine does for most people, is when we get that vaccine, we're able to have our body make little antibodies, because we're getting a microscopic dose of it. So our little soldiers that are traveling around in the immune system see it and go, spot it out, make a copy, remember it, and then dispose of it. So if we later on in the year, mid-December, come across it again, what hopefully will happen is our immune system will go, red alert, red alert. There's that, one we made a copy of back in September. So bam, it's caught it and hopefully gets rid of it before you even know you're infected and have the flu. Now, sometimes that flu comes in and they come in hitting heavy, hitting hard. So when this happens, you might feel a tiny bit of sign or symptoms and you're like, oh, my flu shot didn't work. But the fact of the matter is, if you hadn't had that flu shot, you'd have probably been sick as a dog. And if you've ever had the flu, which I did in January, and now I'm kind of wondering if I didn't have COVID. I was sicker than I'd ever been in my life. I couldn't get out of bed. All I did was cough, hack, and feel nauseated. I had no appetite. I was miserable for a solid 9-10 days. And Michael had gone in and got tested, and they said he had strain A, which was last year's strain. So we would just assumed, okay, it was the flu. We assumed that's what I had too. But now I don't know. I don't know if it was the flu and it just hit me because none of us had the flu shot besides my daughter. And I don't know if it just hit me that hard or if it, me in my mind thinks maybe that was COVID. I don't know. Because I'd never been that sick. I mean, literally, it was bad. But each year, this is why it's important to get the flu vaccine, because each year it's going to be new components. And it's going to be because the virus constantly changes. So it's a benefit. Who does the flu vaccine greatly benefit? The flu vaccine greatly benefits anyone who is elderly because they're more susceptible to respiratory, tiny babies, their lungs aren't fully developed, pregnant women, and anyone that is immunocompromised. So, because we don't want them, if they do get exposed to the flu, we don't want them hit and knocked down for the punch because their body might not recover, especially if they have respiratory related issues like COPD or going through chemo or something like that. Symptoms of the flu: achy, horrible pains in the joints, had it. Muscles felt like jello, high fevers, severe headaches, runny noses, a sore throat, coughing, vomiting, diarrhea, the whole 9 yards. So the flu. Now, does everybody always have these symptoms? Nope. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they might just have this or that or this, or maybe they really don't even realize they have it. It's like their body's got a, just a really strong immune system. So it varies person to person. But these are the classic signs and symptoms.
Now, can you actually, sorry.
No, please don't apologize.
Now, can you actually get the flu when getting the flu shot? Because some people say, well, I got it, I don't take it. It's because every time I get the flu shot, I get the flu. Is that true?
Now, here's the thing. Now, did I show you the video on vaccines? No, I think that was my other class. I got a video I'm going to show y'all about vaccines. And vaccines can be done, like right now with COVID, we have got one group that's running with a RNA-based vaccine. And that is actually like, whoa, because that means they're not taking like this or that. They're actually taking part of its genetic, and they're going to try to build the vaccine from that. Other times, vaccines are built from they take a tiny bit of the flu, and then they put it in a condition that's unfavorable and make it real weak and beaten up, and then make the vaccine from it. So a real weak strain. And then, but most of our vaccines are made from dead viruses that we have actually we stopped their production, and then we take samples of them, because even though they're dead, our body still recognizes it as a foreign object and will still make antibodies, and they still have the coding for us to make those antibodies. So could it be that, yes, sometimes there are years that because of the strain or maybe the way that the vaccine presents, the only way they are able to do it is by giving them that weakened version? Could they possibly get the flu? Yes, but I'm going to tell you how that works. Yes, they got the flu. Did they feel like poop? Maybe. But if they hadn't have had the flu shot and they got the flu, it would have been 10 times worse. And that's just facts. So if they felt like poop after they got the flu shot, they can best believe they would have been 100 times worse if they'd actually caught that real, actual, non-beaten up copy of the flu. Does that make sense?